Welcome to our channel, where we delve into the most spine-chilling horror stories. Today, we bring you the Voice Beneath the Floorboards, a tale of a renovator who uncovers a haunting secret beneath an old building's floor. Prepare yourself for a journey into the unknown. I took the job because it was easy money. No supervisors. No clients breathing down my neck. Just an old townhouse on the edge of Boston's historic district, a restoration brief, and 6 weeks of solitude. They told me it used to be a boarding house for sailors back in the 1700s, then an orphanage after that, and finally some kind of clinic in the 1940s. Since then, it sat empty, too expensive to demolish, too forgotten to restore, until someone decided it was worth fixing again. I never met the owner. Everything came through email, digital blueprints, a signed contract, a front door key mailed in a padded envelope with no return address. All it said was, "Restore the floors first. Nothing else. No plumbing, no wiring. Just the woodwork. Fine by me. Floors are simple. Floors don't talk back, usually." The house sat at the very end of a crooked street that still bore its original name from the colonial maps, Mariner's End. Fitting, I remember thinking. The place had the look of something that had come to the end of a long, long voyage. It was a 3-story structure with a sloped mansard roof, brickwork cracked like old knuckles, and windows so grimy they looked like cataracts. A rusted fence lined the property, choked with ivy. The mailbox had been crushed flat, probably by some drunk backing out of the tight curve at the corner. But the key worked. The door opened like it had been waiting for me. Inside, the air was thick, not just with dust, but weight, like something clinging to the space. Every step I took echoed oddly, not hollow, not creaky, just off, like the wood didn't like being stepped on. But I've worked older homes than this. It takes more than warped planks and bad lighting to get under my skin. So I started with the usual. Tap the joists, measure the sag, mark trouble spots. The floorboards were heavy, original hardwood from the looks of it, worn to a shine in some spots, buckled like a wave in others. The first night, I slept on a cot in the living room, tool bags stacked around me like sandbags. There was no heat, no working kitchen. No cell signal. Around 2:17 a.m., I heard it. A voice, soft, close, just beneath me. At first, I thought I'd left the radio on. I always play some talk show static when I work. Keeps the silence from setting in too deep, but my radio was off. I could see the switch from where I lay. I sat up and listened. Nothing. I even laughed a little. Told myself it was the wind. Or rats. Maybe the old boards shifting in their sleep. But it wasn't. It was a voice. Next day, I chalked it up to dreams. Got up. Made coffee on the little camp stove. Started sanding the front hallway floor. But when I moved to the northwest corner, right by the old radiator, the sander stalled. It just died. No power, no warning. I picked it up and tried another socket. Same thing. I bent down to inspect the outlet and froze. There were scratch marks around the baseboards, not scuffing from furniture, deliberate marks, tiny, uneven, dug deep into the wood like they'd been made with nails. Human ones. Still, I went on working. What else could I do? There was no real danger, just weird vibes and maybe some squatters' leftovers. That night, I brought out my old work notebook and drew a quick floor plan of the house, just to organize my thoughts. That's when I noticed something. The northwest corner of the house, the one where the voice had come from, didn't quite line up. The space on the inside seemed larger than the outer walls allowed for, like there was more room than there should be. I thought maybe it was just bad math. So I measured again. Tape measure, laser guide, the whole thing. Inside, 14 feet, 7 inches. Outside, 13 feet, 3 inches. A missing foot and 4 inches. I knocked on the floor there, just to hear the difference. Tap, tap, tap. Then, tap, tap, return tap. I stood up fast, hard hammering, because it hadn't echoed. It had responded, and I swear, I heard it again. A whisper. So faint it might have just been my own pulse, but it wasn't. It said,
"You hear me now, don't you?"
I didn't sleep much that night. Even with the cot dragged to the other side of the room, away from the northwest corner, I could feel it. The house had gone quiet, but not the kind of quiet you get used to. This was listening quiet. I left early the next morning to clear my head. Walked 10 minutes to the nearest corner store, the kind with flickering fluorescent lights and dusty racks full of soup cans and off-brand batteries. The woman at the counter was reading a tabloid. Didn't even look up when I placed a coffee and 2 sandwiches on the counter.
"You working on that old place down on Mariners?"
She asked suddenly, still flipping pages. I froze, didn't think anyone had noticed me come or go. "Yeah," I said slowly. "Restoration job." She nodded once.
"You hear it yet?"
That stopped me cold. I asked, "Hear what?" She finally looked at me, as gray and dry as ash. Her mouth twisted, not a smile. Not quite.
"You'll know."
I left half the sandwich on the sidewalk without realizing. Got back to the house and sat in my truck for a good 20 minutes before going inside. Something was off. Not just the voice, not just the way that one corner of the house didn't match up. There were signs of movement. A new scuff mark on the floor. A window open I was sure I had locked. And the cot? It had been dragged exactly 6 inches toward the northwest corner. That night, I set up a recorder, just my old field mic and a digital tape unit I used for surveying job sites. I placed it right next to the baseboard in that cursed corner, switched it on, and left it running overnight. Didn't play music. Didn't talk. Just lay in the cot with my eyes closed and my pulse drumming in my ears. I didn't hear anything with my own ears, but when I played back the recording the next morning, I dropped my coffee. At first, there was silence, just the occasional pop and hum of room tone. Then, around the 2-hour mark, a click. A dragging sound, and then a voice, not a whisper, not faint, clear, too clear.
"Let me out. It's so dark. Please. You remember me. You have to."
The last line, I rewound and played it again and again.
"You remember me. How could I? How could a floorboard remember me?"
I spent the next 3 hours tearing up that section of the hallway. I told myself I was just checking the joists, looking for old insulation, or maybe an old crawl space sealed during the clinic renovation. But the layers just kept coming. Underneath the hardwood was another layer of floorboards, older. Hand-hewn planks stained black with mold or maybe old varnish. Beneath those, a third layer, then stone, then something else. I thought I found cloth, but when I touched it, it crumbled into dust, and underneath that, fingers. Or at least I thought I saw them. By the time I grabbed my flashlight and aimed it back into the crack, they were gone. Maybe they were never there. Maybe they were roots. Maybe I was just exhausted. I hadn't slept properly in 3 nights, and the smell of dust and mildew had started seeping into my skin. I closed the floor back up, tried to ignore the voice, but it followed me. Not just in the house. I'd go into town. It was still there. I'd hear it in the hum of the fridge at the convenience store. In the rustle of wind down narrow alleys. In the dead spots between radio stations on my truck's dial. Always the same plea.
"You remember me. Please.
One night, I dreamt of a hallway, but it wasn't this hallway. It was longer, colder, with wooden walls and iron lanterns hanging at regular intervals. I walked it, barefoot. The wood was warm. And then I came to a door, the same dimensions as the section of floor I'd torn open. A voice came from behind it. A child's voice.
Please. I don't want to be alone anymore.
I woke up gasping. The cot had moved again. Now it was touching the northwest corner. I hadn't moved it. No one else had come in. The doors were locked. The windows sealed. I checked every square inch of the house. I even screamed into the floor, told the voice to shut up, that I didn't know it, that I didn't care. It didn't scream back. It just whispered, soft and calm.
You will.
I made the decision to leave on a Sunday. The weather had turned sour overnight, wind slapping the shutters, clouds pressed low like a ceiling about to collapse. I packed my tools, locked up the house, and threw the cot into the back of the truck. No voice that night. No whisper. No knocks. It was almost too easy. Halfway down the hill, I stopped at a diner. The kind of place that still served coffee in thick white mugs and buttered toast with real butter. I just needed to feel normal for an hour. The waitress was young, blonde braid, tired eyes. She came to top off my mug and asked where I was coming from. When I said Mariner's End, her smile dropped. She didn't say anything else, just nodded slowly and walked away. When I asked for the check, it came with a folded napkin. On the inside was written, "If you heard it, it won't stop. If you answered, it's already in." I drove straight home. Didn't even unpack the truck. Just threw my clothes in the wash and tried to forget. Tried to sleep in my own bed. Tried to be done. But that night, as I stood brushing my teeth, the faucet let out a high-pitched squeal, not metal, not pressure. A voice.
Why'd you leave me?
I spat blood into the sink. The next morning, I checked my phone's voice memos. There were recordings I hadn't made, clips of me talking in my sleep. One file, marked 3:12 a.m., was different. It started with breathing, then silence, then,
You know who I am. You left me under the floor. Come back.
It wasn't just a haunting. This wasn't some ghost tied to a house. It was following me. That day, I dug out old documents from my father's file cabinet. He was a contractor before me. Worked restorations in the 80s and 90s, kept meticulous records. In a manila folder labeled Mariner's End, I found notes in his handwriting. Blueprint sketches, cost estimates, then a page torn from a journal. Client insists we leave northwest corner untouched. Said it's not part of the original structure. Said there's something under there. Something they promised never to disturb. I called the number on the contract, the one from the anonymous job posting, disconnected. I checked the email. Gone. No trace. Just a blank entry in my inbox with a corrupted subject line. I was never meant to finish the job, just wake it up. 3 nights later, it escalated. I woke up not in my bed, but on the living room floor, covered in dust, hands raw, nails split. The carpet had been ripped up, wood panels pulled aside, and underneath them, scratches. The same kind, small, human. And then came the voice, not from the floor, from behind me.
You put me here.
I turned. No one. Just my hallway, just the dark. I thought about checking into a motel, calling a priest, burning the place down. But deep down, I knew none of that would work. I had listened. I had answered. And once you answer, it knows your voice. It knows where to find you. So I went back, drove through a storm. Didn't pack. Didn't tell anyone. I just returned to Mariner's End. The key still worked. The house welcomed me. Inside, everything was exactly as I'd left it, except the cot. It was gone. I in its place, a hatch. Small, wooden, flush with the floor, unsealed. The hatch was new. It hadn't been there before. I would have noticed, no question. But now it fit perfectly right where the cot used to sit, like it had always belonged there. I stood over it, heart thudding. There was no handle, just a small iron ring in the center. I hesitated for what felt like an hour. Then I crouched, reached out, and pulled. The wood was strangely light. And no resistance. It swung up on nearly silent hinges, revealing darkness so deep it seemed to suck the air out of the room. The smell hit me next, not rot. Not exactly. It was colder than that, like wet stone and something long buried. There was a ladder, rusty, narrow, descending into what looked like a crawl space, but the scale was wrong. Too deep, too dark. I couldn't see the bottom. For a long moment, I thought, close it, walk away, seal it up forever. But the voice returned, not from the hole, from behind me, from inside the walls. Come down. I can't see you from here. It didn't sound malicious. It sounded tired, like a child waiting too long in the dark. I climbed down. The metal groaned beneath my weight, and every step echoed like it was bouncing through a cavern. The air grew colder, thicker. I expected to reach packed earth, old pipes, a concrete slab. But instead, my boots touched wood. A second floor, below the first. It was a room, fully formed. Candlelight flickered along warped wooden walls, and in the center stood a chair, small, child-sized, facing the corner. And in the chair sat a figure, still, silent, wrapped in tattered cloth, head bowed, hair long and matted like roots. I didn't speak, didn't move. The air was so heavy I could barely breathe. Then the figure twitched a slow tilt of the head, a crack of old bone or wood, and then a whisper.
Took you long enough.
I should have run. Should have screamed, but I just stood there. The figure turned slowly to face me. Its face was familiar, not exactly mine, not mine. It was a boy, 9, 10, but the eyes were mine. I remembered then, not in a flash, not like a movie montage, more like falling through pages of a diary I'd never written. A clinic, voices shouting, the sound of boots, being dragged down a hallway. My mother screaming. A door slamming, then darkness. The house hadn't always been a private residence. Before it was a clinic, it was a children's hospital. Before that, an orphanage. Records long gone, forgotten, but not by him.
I waited.
The boy said.
I screamed. You heard me once, remember? When we were small. You promised you'd come back.
My mouth went dry. I didn't know. He stood as he stepped into the light. The illusion of youth cracked. His limbs were twisted, stretched, like something had tried to grow beyond what the body allowed. But his face never aged.
I didn't want to be alone.
He said.
But now, I won't be.
He raised one arm. His fingers, sharp, splintered, bone white, reached toward me. I stepped back. He stepped forward. Then everything shook. The room pulsed. The candlelight flared. The ceiling groaned. And above me, from the open hatch, I heard my own voice. Hey, are you down there? Can you hear me? It was my voice, calling down, but I hadn't spoken. I was frozen. Then I understood. This wasn't a room under the house. It was the house, the part of it buried in memory, buried in pain, and it wanted me to stay. I turned toward the sound, my own voice, calling from the hatch above. It echoed faintly, like it came from the end of a long tunnel. But it was real. The boy, the thing, in front of me stepped closer.
You left me once.
He said, his face slackening, bones shifting beneath skin like a puppet in a too small shell.
You promised.
His voice cracked on the last word, and I felt it then, not fear, not horror. Because he wasn't some demon, that he wasn't a ghost, he was what was left, the part of me that never came out of that place, the part that remembered the screams behind closed doors, the lies the nurses told, the needles, the locked rooms. They'd buried it all, turned the building into something respectable, papers signed, permits filed, but they never told the truth, never told the children's stories. They left him there. And somewhere in the maze of trauma and memory, I had too. I can't leave, I said softly, but you can. His head tilted again.
You don't understand.
He whispered.
I am this place now.
The walls began to bend inward, the wood groaning, twisting like it was alive. Faces began to form in the grain. Eyes, mouths, children, dozens of them, hundreds, all whispering.
Don't forget us. Tell them. Let them see.
And then I knew what I had to do. I stepped toward him slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. I'm sorry I forgot, I said. I remember now, and I won't bury you again. He stared at me. His eyes softened. He opened his mouth. But instead of words, a long, low wail came out. Not one voice. All of them. Every forgotten name. Every sealed room. Every child left behind. The room went white. I woke up in the attic, collapsed on the floor, covered in dust. No hatch. No crawl space. Just sunlight through cracked beams and the smell of old pine. I stumbled out of the house and called the state historical board that afternoon, then the local news, then the church, then the police. Excavations began within the week. They found rooms sealed behind false walls. They found bones. It was on national headlines for 3 days. Then it became a podcast, then a footnote, but I never let it go. The boy never came back, not in dreams, not in whispers, but sometimes when I walk past a construction site and hear a hammer fall in the silence, I wonder if it's starting again, somewhere else. If you hear the voice beneath the floorboards, don't answer, because once you do, it remembers you. If the voice beneath the floorboards left you on edge, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more horror stories that explore the supernatural and the psychological. Share your thoughts and theories below. We love hearing from fellow horror enthusiasts.